In most games, the character that you, the player, controls is a pretty big deal. Dark Souls, the player character is literally called the Chosen Undead. There's an ancient prophecy that states that at the end of the Age of Fire, an undead champion will appear and ring the bells of awakening in Lordran. Guess who that undead champion is? You then take down the Lord of Cinder, the big bad final boss, and you choose to either end the Age of Fire or extend it. You're a pretty big deal. Hades, you are Zagreus, son of Hades, the god of the underworld. You are literally a god. You want to escape to the surface of the underworld to try and find your mother Persephone. God of War, you're Kratos, a demigod, the son of Zeus himself. The entire plot revolves around your vendetta against the gods of Olympus after they shunned you and betrayed you. After actually getting your revenge by killing literally every god in Olympus, Kratos goes to move to the land of the Nordic gods where he will surely get into similar antics all over again. You are Kratos, and the game is Kratos' story. Hollow Knight, you're the child of two higher beings, gods that once ruled over the entire kingdom of Hallownest. You break the seals on the magical temple and you go inside and you cure Hallownest's infection. Sounds like the character you play as, although unnamed, might be quite important to the story of the game. Half-Life 2, a godlike figure known only as the G-Man, saw your ability to adapt and survive in the world-ending circumstances of Half-Life 1. So the G-Man puts you into stasis as a kind of soldier to unleash when the world needs him most. And when you're released into the world, everyone you meet's all like,
goodness, Gordon Freeman.
Dr. Freeman, I presume.
Time, Dr. Freeman.
Gordon Freeman.
Gordon Freeman. Gordon fucking Freeman.
Well, if it isn't Gordon Freeman at last.
Hey, Gordon.
Hey, Dr. Freeman.
Gordon Freeman?
And I've got Gordon Freeman with me.
You're a pretty big deal. But are there any games where this is not the case? Are there any games where the game and its plot would continue on completely unchanged if you, the player, wasn't there? Hey, welcome to my video where I discuss this topic, and I avoid talking too much about the two best examples I can think of because I talk about these games too much. There's Subnautica. Your ship, the Aurora, crash lands on this watery planet and you're one of many survivors. The game is seen through your perspective, sure. You're the one experiencing the events, but in reality, a large portion of the plot continues without your input throughout the game. You could have been any number of the 157 people who were on board this ship when it crashed into the ocean on this planet. Or what about This War of Mine, a bleak, depressing survival strategy game made to show off the horrors of war. You aren't a super soldier eviscerating hordes of nameless, faceless bad guys from the battlefield. You're not the chosen one. You don't have any training, and you don't have any plot armor. You are just a pack of civilians. The game doesn't take place from any one person's perspective. Instead, it's from a myriad of different civilian characters. And the characters that you don't play as or control are in exactly the same boat as you are. They're all starving, and they're all suffering. The game's moment-to-moment story is molded by your actions as a group. But your little group is just one of many hundreds of groups also experiencing the exact same conditions that you're experiencing. The game is about the horrors of war, not about any particular individual that the game decides to follow along for the ride. Or what about Darkest Dungeon? You're a guy who inherited some cursed land, but the game mostly follows your party members. Party members who are entirely expendable, free to hire, but expensive to keep mentally stable. These party members are just the tools used by the player to reach their eventual goal, not necessarily the main characters that most RPG party members would be. In these games, the world is entirely indifferent to your presence. And even if sometimes the story follows along with your character, the wider story and the world itself does not largely change based on the actions of the character that you play as. You just so happen to be the person who's present to witness the world, not necessarily change it. And these games are incredibly unique experiences. People love that power trip that you go on when you play Halo and you're Master Chief. The Master Chief, and you go on a killing spree and you save the world, yada yada yada. But games where that isn't the case aren't necessarily less exciting, they're just exciting for different reasons. That sort of helplessness that your character will feel and that you, the player, will feel is actually part of the appeal of these games. It makes you feel like you're in a world and a story that is bigger than yourself, rather than being the chosen one who saves today all the time. And I love games like this, games where you're merely a witness to the crazy interconnected story that unfolds before you, where ancient civilizations once stood and thrived and you're just witnessing the aftermath, where godlike beings have their own interpersonal conflicts that you just so happen to stumble across and witness but not take part in. But most games are not like this. Most games have you being some crazy, powerful, chosen god warrior. And for an understandable reason, because if you think about it, the appeal of a video game would be to have that sort of power fantasy. And it's fun to have that. Even in games where you're just some soldier, you end up being the deadliest soldier the world's ever seen, effortlessly killing hundreds of enemies on the battlefield. People like the power that this gives you. It's quite exciting. But sometimes it can be quite interesting to have a game where you're anything but noteworthy, where your perspective is the only interesting thing about you. Thanks for watching.